guys, Infernape here. Now, I'm sure that a lot of you can agree that you have friends who like Pokemon that you like, but there's also someone out there that dislikes the Pokemon that you like. So, I have had many examples of this. I've got loads of friends who like Pokemon, but they also dislike Pokemon that I like. I also dislike Pokemon that they like. So, I decided to make a video with one of my very good friends to go over Pokemon that both of us like and dislike. So in this video, we're going to be going over my top 5 Pokemon that I dislike that a friend of mine likes. And since I wanted to broaden my horizons, I decided not to do a collaboration with David this time. I actually have another friend in mind to do this video with. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
How's it going, everyone? Jayzowen here. I'm glad to be on the channel today, and I'd like to thank Robert the Infernape for inviting me over to collab with this video.
Hey, you're welcome on the channel anytime, buddy. So like I said, on this video, we're going to be going over top 5 Pokemon that I dislike, but my friend Jamie likes. So, this is going to be quite an interesting video. This is a video just to prove that even though that we dislike and like similar Pokemon, we can still come together in the Pokemon community.
Likewise, after you're finished watching this spectacular video, you can go over to my channel where we'll be going over Pokemon that I dislike but Robert the Infernape likes.
Be sure to let us know down in the comment section below if you enjoyed this video as much as we did making it. If you want us to collab a bit more, if you want me to make similar videos like this in the future, and if you have any video suggestions for the future, be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. Also, be sure to go subscribe to my man Jamie. The link to his channel will be down in the description below. So without further ado, let's get into the video! Alright, at number 5 we have Vileplume. Now, Vileplume is not an amazing Pokemon. I just think its design is a tiny bit lazy. Because, let's think about it, it's literally a small gremlin with a giant-ass flower on its head.
Whilst Rob believes that the Pokemon's design is very lazy, I actually feel like Vileplume has a really good and clean design. I love the flower that's on top of its head that kind of resembles a sort of like sombrero hat in a sense. And I also like the little bulb at the top of it where it shoots its attacks out of. This Pokemon, whilst may not be the best Gen 1 grass type, as Venusaur has the better stats, I still believe Vileplume is still a worthy Pokemon to use in a playthrough, and I highly recommend using it.
Not only does Venusaur have better stats, it also has a better move pool. Like, literally, in red, blue, and yellow, you can barely teach Vileplume anything. At all. Not only that, Vileplume is a version-exclusive Pokemon, meaning you can only get it in one version of the game. Apart from Yellow, where you can get both Vileplume and Victory Bell. But why would you want to use Vileplume or Victory Bell when you can use Venusaur, which can be found earlier and has a far better move pool?
Whilst in the earlier generations, it is true that the usage for Vileplume is a lot harder, especially since it has to contend with its contender, the eggplant, as I like to call it. I feel like in later generations, Vileplume is able to kind of carve a way for itself. And in the generation where Vileplume is available, you may not want to go with Bulbasaur. You may want to choose Charmander or Squirtle instead, which I think I can attest that the vast majority are going to go for those starters. I'm sorry, Venusaur. But even with that, I still feel like Vileplume is a valid option if you don't choose the grass route of your starter.
Okay, that I will give you. Some people may want to choose Charizard or Blastoise over Venusaur, because in popularity, the other two are better, because of the fact that people would rather pick a fire type or a water type rather than a grass type. But if they wanted to pick a grass type Pokemon, I'd recommend Exeggutor more, because it has a better typing and psychic types are absolutely indestructible. Like, be honest with yourself. You'd rather have a psychic type than a small child with stubby legs and arms with a giant flower on its head. At number 4, we have Electrode. Now, Electrode is another Gen 1 Pokemon with a boring-ass design. It's literally a Pokeball turned upside down with a face. Like, what's next? Are they going to turn a potion upside down and give it a face and call it a Pokemon?
I mean, they did just get a flamingo, took a letter out of its name, and called it a Pokemon. But anyways, let's talk about Electrode's design. Because whilst, yeah, it's a simple, goofy, weird design, it kind of works in the Pokemon's favour, as in a lot of generations, Electrode is used as a sort of trap, as most items found on the map are disguised as Pokeballs. So you'll be shocked when you discover that when you go to pick up an item, you're actually being encountered by an Electrode, and if you try to battle it, it's probably going to blow up in your face. Which I find to be kind of a clever way to disguise items, as well as make you feel more cautious when you're investigating.
While it was clever for the designers to make Electrode sort of a trap for trainers, you're forgetting the fact that they did this up until Gen 6, where it wasn't as easy to tell the difference. But when Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee and onwards came around, they literally just made the Pokeballs upside down. So it was obvious which one was a Voltorb or an Electrode and which was an item. So therefore, it kind of just throws that creativity straight out the window.
That is primarily an issue with Game Freak and their design choices, as I feel like they are trying to target a more wider and accepting demographic for their game, which is probably why they made Electrode a lot easier to spot in the future games. But it still doesn't excuse the fact that most of the generations, Electrode has been cleverly disguised. As for usage, Electrode isn't the best looking at the stats. I mean, he's fast, but that's all he's got going for him. But with how limited his move pool is, what Electrode can do is amazing. I used one quite recently in my Alpha Sapphire run, and that Electrode was probably the best member of my team.
Kind of ironic because of the fact that Electrode is possibly the worst electric type in Generation 1. And I'm not talking about just its design, I'm talking about move pool, stats, and usability. If you really want to use an electric type, you're better off with either Raichu or Jolteon. Mostly Jolteon. Like, Jolteon is absolutely amazing. Go with Jolteon if you're going down a Gen 1 route. But Raichu can be just as good. I would stay away from Electabuzz because, you know, it doesn't appear as much. But at the same time, Electrode is just absolutely useless. It is a useless Pokemon, its design is awful, and its usability is zilch. At number 3, we have Clefable. Now let's be honest, Clefable is an annoying Pokemon. It's annoying to find, annoying to get, and especially annoying to evolve.
I sure hope Dr. Amnesia isn't watching this video, as he may have a thing or two to say to you. But in regards to Clefable, I feel like Clefable is really good. Like, really, really good. It's very bulky. It gets the Fairy typing in Generation 6, which helps to add to its wide array of move pool. It's pretty well known in the competitive scene for being a really good Pokemon. And also, it's from space!
I, for one, do hope that Dr. Amnesia is watching this video, because he can back me up on the fact that getting a Clefairy in Generation 4 is insanity. Like, when he got BDSP, he actually wanted to run a Clefable on this team. But it took days and days and days for him to find a Clefairy. And once he found a Clefairy, he found it very annoying to level up Friendship to evolve it into Clefairy. And he found it just as ludicrously annoying to find a Moonstone. Because in order to get a Moonstone in Generation 4, you have to thief a Moonstone off another Clefairy, which will take you several days unless you have a Pokemon with Thief, as well as the ability Compound Eyes or Super Luck.
I feel like the Clefairy thing is more of a skill issue. I found mine on my first attempt, and I'm pretty sure it didn't take you very long to find one either. But yes, evolving Clefairy into a Clefable is a goddamn nightmare, because unless you get on your bike and basically bike a marathon, it's going to be annoying to get the friendship needed to evolve into Clefairy. However, BDSP, you could mine for the Moonstone to get Clefable. I don't recommend it. It's mind-numbingly boring, and you're probably better off just thiefing the Clefairy. But even then, you can still just find a Clefairy and evolve it via Moonstone, though you would have to get later on into the game. But once you do that, Clefable is a solid member of the team, and can pretty much help you in any scenario. It's got good damage, you know, it can set up, it's got good bulk. What else could you ask for? Except maybe a bit of a better design.
Ah, I've got something that you can ask for. The Fairy type actually being introduced earlier into the series. Because before the Fairy type was introduced, Clefable was dog shit. Like, I'm pretty sure most of the Pokemon community can back me up here. Like, it was absolute dog shite. It was barely used, and it wasn't really that good. Like, name me one time where Clefable was actually useful before the Fairy type was introduced. Because the Fairy type dominated the competitive scene.
Clefable was actually used quite a lot in Generation 3 and 4 competitive, only being in the underused tier, which back then was a pretty good tier for Clefable.
Hello, yes, post-production Jayzowen here, which is probably why my mic quality is a little better. After doing some research on Clefable, I found out that Clefable actually saw Uber's usage in Generation 4, as well as OU usage, which just furthers my point that Clefable is actually a lot better than I thought, even that I thought, in the competitive scene. Just thought I'd point that out there.
It was also doing pretty well in Gold and Silver, where it was in underused borderline, which meant that theoretically Clefable could be used in the OU meta, just not as often as actual OU Pokemon. Clefable actually had some great competitive usage even before it gained the Fairy typing. It's just the Fairy typing just solidified its spot as a great competitive Pokemon, and to this day still dominates. Unless you're in Scarlet and Violet, then the Pokemon doesn't exist.
Okay, fair enough, it was good back then. But at the same time, I do have a bad taste in my mouth towards Clefable because of the fact that its design is awful, and I'm not a big fan of, like, cutesy, pink, derpy-like Pokemon. That's just not my style. At number 2, we have Tinkerton. Like I said, I'm not into the whole cutesy type Pokemon. So when a small pink child looks like their catchphrase would be who carries Mjolnir, that just doesn't sit right with me.
Tinkerton has settled in very well into the Pokemon community, as tons of people are seeing, loving, and appreciating a tiny little hammer gremlin. Tinkerton was the one who won a popularity contest for the new Pokemon introduced in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, easily reaching the top spot. And also, it's a gremlin. But I feel like some of the love that Tinkerton gets isn't because it's a cutesy design. It's because it's an evil little gremlin. If you look in the Pokédex entries, you'll not only find that it uses its hammer from the remains of steel types, but also that it literally rendered Corviknight unable to be a taxi service because they knocked Corviknight out of the air with rocks. This thing, it's a little bastard. What else can I say?
Alright, I will admit the origin behind its hammer is quite interesting. But I still don't like it. Its design is just goddamn awful. Like, I cannot like this thing. I just cannot. It's by far my least favourite Pokemon introduced into the new generation. And I personally think that the people voting on that popularity contest only did it because they're more fan of memeable Pokemon rather than actual good Pokemon. For example, let's take Lucario for example. Lucario is another Steel type. It's actually really good. And it did win quite a large portion of a popularity contest because it's actually good. But then, a few generations later, we have this little bastard. Why would this win any form of popularity contest? I would rather pick Simisear over this thing. And Simisear lost a popularity contest once. It literally got the least amount of votes. It just pisses me off.
I mean, people just like the Pokemon equivalent of Amy Rose, I suppose. And looking at the stats, you'd think, giant hammer, this thing is going to hit like a truck. 75 base attack. But, and this is a big but, Tinkerton has access to one of the strongest signature moves of a Pokemon, Gigaton Hammer. 150 base power, has 5 PP. There's got to be a drawback, right? Well, the drawback is that Tinkerton cannot use this attack twice in a row. But if you pair this with a move like Protect, which, well, protects the Pokemon from any damage, you can instantly use Gigaton Hammer again without really too much fret. So, Tinkerton, overall, I feel is a really good Pokemon to use in a playthrough. Competitive, not so much. But playthrough-wise, it's a great Pokemon. You can get it early. It's pretty decent throughout. And, I don't know, what else should I say? It has the same typing as Zacian, I guess. There's that. You know, the Dark Souls dog, tiny Amy Rose. Basically the same thing, really.
I highly doubt anyone in their right mind would run Tinkerton with Gigaton Hammer and Protect in a basic playthrough. In competitive, I somewhat see it. But in a regular playthrough, I don't get it. And while yes, it does have some use in a playthrough, I personally believe that there are other Pokemon out there that do its job but better. Hence why, for my best team in Scarlet and Violet, I chose 2 Pokemon that have the same types as Tinkerton, but I personally think do a better job. Those being Gardevoir and Lucario. So, it is usable, but it's also replaceable. And finally, at number 1, we have Embor. Now, I know that Jamie is going to defend this one to his last breath, but this is by far one of the worst starter Pokemon I have ever seen in my life.
Embor may not be a very popular starter, and I'm very biased because it was the first Pokemon I've ever chosen, but I do feel like there are weaker, less interesting design Pokemon than Embor. Because I feel like Embor's design is really cool. I also feel like he's really good in a playthrough. I mean, Rob, you did put him in a best team after all. What else? I really like Embor's playstyle. Just that reckless playstyle. You know, you can run quite a surprising amount of coverage moves on him. There's Scald, which he's not really a special attacker, but if you want that, he's got it. He's got Head Smash, Wild Charge, Flare Blitz. He's got stuff like Hammer Arm. He's just a pretty decent starter. I don't know what to say. I love him. I like how big and burly he is. And Even if you don't like him, hey, at least you don't have to cook him. He does that himself.
Yes, I do admit I did put Embor in a best team, but literally only because the other two starters were irrelevant. Samurott you didn't really need because of the fact that in Black and White, you didn't need Surf to get to any important places for the story. So you could literally run the entire game without using Surf. And Superior is hot garbage. Its only move pool by level up is Grass and normal attacks. And since there weren't any other good fire types, I had to go with Embor. But it still doesn't deny the fact that it is an awful design Pokemon. I don't see how you think this thing is good. Tepig I get. Tepig is by far the cutest out of the three. Then it evolves into Pignite and everything goes to shit. It's literally an obese pig in a wrestling leotard. How can you think that's good? Then when it evolves into Embor, it looks like that creepy neighbour you have, but in a form of a pig. Like literally, its face is very off-putting. It's like, hey there, come back to my place so I can tickle your feet.
You see, maybe it's because you do not see his beautiful, luscious fire beard, or the strong arms capable of smashing through concrete. But you see, Embor is more than just a fire pig. The entire line has something going on for them. You have Tepig. Cute, adorable. I liked its backstory in the anime. You have Pignite. I agree, I fucking hate Pignite. But Embor is just cool. He kind of has like a cocky attitude going on with him with his like facial expressions. And he is a unit. Like an absolute unit. Other firefighting starters basically went for like the more speedy agility look, but Embor changed that. Embor went with like a more massive, giant, absolute unit look. And I resonate with that, because, let's be honest, I look like I'd have an Embor. We have similarities, me and him. And, well, I've used him for so many years. I can't see myself using any of a starter. Especially Superior, like you mentioned. And just overall, I don't think Embor is that bad of a Pokemon and is kind of overhated. Pokemon challenges, shout out for being an Embor supporter. You're my guy.
You gotta understand, this was the game right after the first Pokemon game that I ever played, which was Generation 4. And back then, I had another firefighting starter, that being Infernape. And from going to Infernape to Embor, just felt like a massive letdown to the firefighting Pokemon. Because it goes from Infernape, who is basically Son Goku, and he is an absolute monster. Not to mention the fact in the anime, he's by far, in my personal opinion, the best Pokemon that Ash owns. Then we go straight into Embor, who is an obese pig who... The fire beard does look okay, I guess, but I personally think that the fire crown on Infernape's head is a lot better. Plus, I just don't like the fact that we go from cute to ugly in one evolution. And there it guys, hope you enjoyed the video as much as I did, and be sure to let me know down in the comment section below if you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it, if you agree with my topics, if you agree with Jamie's topics, if you want us to do more collaborations, and if you have any video suggestions for the future, be sure to let me know down in the comment section below. Also, I'd like to give a massive thank you to Jamie for joining me today.
It's been good to be on here too. I've had a lot of fun making this video, and if any of you want to see us collab more in the future, let us know, because this has been pretty entertaining.
If you want to check out the video that we did over on Jamie's channel, I will leave a link to his channel down in the description below, so that way you can go watch it. And I would recommend watching it. It was a very fun video to make, and there was a lot of hot topics. Did you enjoy the video as much as we did making it? If you did, be sure to give it a massive thumbs up, comment down below, share this video with a friend, and if you're new, subscribe to my channel. It's been Inferno today. Okay, that's all from me, so until the next time, this is Infernape, signing off. Bye!